Good. We're going to open it. I have a lot more questions, but I'm not going to hog it. We're going to open it up. But I just want to say a question came in about visas. So we attract a lot of international students, but what do they do? How do they start a company when they don't have a visa, work visa? That's obviously been getting a lot of attention. One thing, I mentioned why the federal government's so important. There's been a big push. There are visas you can get, if you create jobs or put in money, and countries are competing. Canada is trying to get the people that aren't getting visas in the U.S. People are talking about floating boats, leasing cruise ships and keeping them just outside the, 3-mile or 7-mile range and have people come in temporarily. But I think, Congress has recognized the need. We train people, give them a PhD and send them home. But, I did get an H-1B visa for our associate director at the Entrepreneurship Lab, and he's been a wonderful asset. So I'm all in favor of increasing visas. So let's, Eric, you had a question, and then we'll come up here.
Yeah, a couple points. I think the visa issues are very important. When I've talked to Eric about this, more than 65% of our postdocs are not U.S. citizens. So if you talk about talent in New York, that's a big issue. But my real question has to do with, and maybe a suggestion to universities, Deborah brought it up, which I think is great, is thinking about alumni. Students and postdocs and this talent are transients within a university. I think universities need to do a better job at really bringing together these alumni, because, one thing as I learned when I left the academic institution, I'm an alumni of NYU School of Medicine, and one of the greatest assets at NYU, along with many other things, is its library, having access to those journals. Once you leave an academic institution, you no longer have access to a lot of those great journals to get to understand and follow the field. And I think and especially with the entrepreneurship programs that are existing in the courses that are being developed at the universities, having those available to alumni, that's going to keep them here in the community and drive them and actually build a stronger relationship between the alumni and the universities. So I really would recommend the universities think about that. How do they really focus on building those relationships with their alumni and keeping them local and providing the resources that are available, especially I'm in the life sciences space, and the resources of getting access to certain equipment or mouse facilities are going to be very important for a lot of our young startups who are not going to have the capital to spend on that.
Yeah, so that's absolutely agree. It's interesting because part of the new Columbia Entrepreneurship Initiative is being run out of the alumni office. And there's a recognition that the alums, so I'll just mention 2 brief points just by way of illustration. The alums are a fantastic source of coaches and mentors for the entrepreneurs who are currently within the university. So what you're seeing now is a much more aggressive tapping into that network to find venture capitalists, angel investors. Alessandro Piol, who wrote the Tech in the City book, is on the board of visitors at the engineering school. It's a great book, and it's a very, very fast read. So it's really exciting to see these folks coming back to campus and being willing to give back to the teams on campus. The other thing I'll mention is I remember when the Columbia venture community got started 4 or 5 years ago, and it was a handful of alums who put together an online email network to share stories, share resources, and try to help each other out. And I believe they're now up to, I don't know, Frank, do you know how many people? It's like 8,000 or more alumni who are interested in this field. And they're constantly swapping, like, I've got a great intern, I've got a job opening, I've got a great attorney, anyone had this problem, anyone had an experience writing non-disclosure agreements. All the sort of nuts and bolts of what you need to do to make a company grow. But what's interesting is it's also served to knit that network together. So they now have mixers around town that people come to meet each other because they've only seen each other via email.
I think the alumni, and if you could bring the mic up here for a question, are a huge, important part, both in the perceptions of feasibility. It's something to do. Sweta, can you bring? I already said she's going to ask a question. But Stanford, a great school. Although less than 35% of Stanford freshmen are residents of California, a full 45% of the companies founded by graduates are located in California. There's a big thing about staying. I think Pace has something like, in our alumni offices, there's something like 150,000 living alumni, and 80% of them live within 100 miles of Pace. And when you read the book like Tech in the City, there's a lot of great entrepreneurs in New York City who came from outside of the state to come to school here and stayed. So it's a huge part. So we'll take a question here and then.